Good morning, guys. So today what we're going to be continuing with analyzing triangles, right? But this time we're going to go a little bit further in depth into the triangle parts, right? So we're talking about the triangle angles and its sides, right? Relationships amongst triangle sides and angles, right? Triangle sides and angles. Which sounds, again, seems like it's going to be long and hard and all that. It's not, guys. It's one of those things where, honestly, there's this lesson that there's always been, and there's this relationship that's always existed amongst triangles, right? With their angles, with their sides. And it's the same idea as when you're looking and thinking of a door. And I'll show you what I mean then. Let's say we have this triangle, right? Where we have a triangle right here, right? Let's call this here. Let's label this here. Let's call that A. Let's call this C. Let's call this one here F, right? And let's say that this angle here is 30 degrees. Let's say that this angle here is 80 degrees. And let's say that this angle here is 70 degrees. We have those three angles, right? So when people want to analyze triangle sides and triangle angles, you're always looking to analyze basically what's the smallest side, right? Because they give us the angles. So if you needed to, you can figure out what's the smallest angle. So in this case, the smallest angle would be C because it's 30, right? We know that the biggest angle here in this case would be 80, so the biggest angle would be F. But what we also know is that when we have an angle creates a side, right? So what I mean by that is, let's say that we're looking at this 30. So if we have this angle right here, this angle is opening up to the opposite side, right? So right there. So when we have this angle, it opens up to that side. Goes across that angle right here is what's creating this side, right? Because that's our side right there, our angle's right here. So one thing that we know is if the angle is smaller, then that side is going to be smaller. The opposite idea is true. Whenever you have a big angle, it's going to create a big side, right? And the reason that happens, I can probably even show it to you with markers, right? If we have these two markers, let's say that this is a side, this is a side. The angle here is in the middle. The bigger the angle gets, the bigger that side on top gets, right? So the bigger that angle is getting, the bigger that side is getting. The smaller that this angle is getting, then the smaller that side is. So there's a relationship that does exist in triangles amongst the sides and angles, which tells us that if this angle is the smallest in the triangle, then the side that goes with it is also going to be the smallest side, right? So in this case, since 30 is our smallest angle, this side here that corresponds to it is going to be the smallest side because the smallest angle creates the smallest side. The opposite's true. Our biggest angle, the 80, is going to create our biggest side because if the angle gets big, this side is also going to be the longest, right? And the 70 is going to correspond to this side right there at the bottom. So basically what all these arrows show you is that it's telling you what angle corresponds to what side, what angle goes with what side. We know that this 30 goes with this side because it's always across, it's always the opposite, right? The opposite angle goes with the opposite side all the time, right? So if we draw arrows, it becomes so much easier just to be able to see it to help us out. We know that this 30 opens up, this angle right here, opens up to the opposite side. We know that this 80 opens up to this opposite side, right? We know that this angle opens up to this opposite side. Basically, the upside down A opens up this way, right? Always across. So the one thing we always know, the smallest side is always opposite the smallest angle, right? And I'm writing that just because it's going to help us actually always associate it. The smallest side it's always going to be opposite the smallest angle. So in this case, the smallest angle is 30. We know that the side that goes with it is AF. So if 30 is the smallest side, then we know that AF. If 30 is the smallest angle, I'm sorry, then we know that AF is the smallest side. Opposite also goes true. The biggest angle corresponds to the biggest side, goes with the biggest side. So if the biggest angle here is 80, we know that the biggest side is AC. And if 70 is the middle angle, we know that the middle side is going to be CF, right? It's that idea. That's that relationship that exists among triangles, right? Knowing that the side that corresponds to the angle is always going to go together, right? The smallest with the smallest, the biggest with the biggest, but it's always the ones that are across from each other, right? And I do want to practice with this now that you see that, just because I do want you guys to see how it is that we can actually associate sides with angles, right? What corresponds to what. And so what I'm going to want you to do, I'm going to want you to list the sides from smallest to biggest, right? I'm going to want you to actually list the sides from smallest to biggest. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a triangle, right? I'm going to make this one A, I'm going to make this one G, I'm going to make this one H. I'm going to call this angle here 54 degrees. I'm going to call this angle here, let's call this one, let's say that one is 60 degrees. And then I'm going to make this one here 66 degrees, right? So we have that. And again, if you wanted to check your numbers, you would see that they work because all three angles all add up to 180. So if we're looking to list them from smallest to biggest, right? Shortest to longest. The one thing that I'm always going to tell you guys, draw your arrows to see what corresponds to what, right? What angle goes with what side. And it's, again, it's always opposite, right? So we have the 54. Draw an arrow to the side that's opposite it, right? Goes there. The 60, since it's at the top. Draw an arrow to the bottom. Always the opposite. Since this angle here is on the right, draw an arrow to the left side, right? Always across. The top angle goes to the bottom side. The left angle goes to the right side. The right angle goes to the left side because that's opening up to this side. This is opening up down. This one's opening up that way, right? So if we're going from smallest to biggest, let's start. If we want to know our smallest side, right? Smallest side, we look for the smallest angle. In this case, our smallest angle would be 54, right? So since 54 is the smallest, we know that our smallest side is going to be AH, right? AH is going to be our smallest side. Because again, since 54 is the smallest, we know that AH goes with the smallest. The next one, since we're going smallest to biggest, after 54 comes 60. 60 opens up to the bottom, so that would be GH. And some people would say GH, some people would say HG. Same thing, guys. And then our biggest angle is 66. 66 goes over here, so it would be AG. And that's it. That's our order, guys. That's how we analyze it. So the smallest side we know is AH, because it goes with the 54. Our middle side is GH, because it goes with the 60. Our biggest side, our longest side is AG, because it goes with 66, right? So we listed them from smallest to biggest, shortest to longest, right? Let's try another one, just to see if you guys get comfortable with it. And again, it's just analyzing all the angles all the time, guys. It's getting comfortable with the angles, getting comfortable seeing it, right? Let's see, we have this. Let's say that this one here is going to end up being D, that's E, and this is K, right? Make this one 120 degrees. Make this one here 35 degrees. And let's say I don't give you anything else, right? Let's say I wanted you to list these same thing from shortest to longest. That's how I want you to list the sides. So shortest to longest. Figure out what's the shortest side, figure out what's the longest side from there. And now think, because even though they only give you two angles, you need to be able to analyze this and think about it, right? So that's 120, that's 35. We know that this is a triangle, even though I drew a very bad triangle. If you ever need to figure out the angles of a triangle, always remember, triangle adds up to 180 degrees, right? So if I want to figure out the missing angle, we know that we have 120 plus 35 gives us 155 degrees, right? So those two add up to 155. And now, if we want to figure out the missing angle, again, triangle always adds up to 180. So we know 180 minus 155 is going to end up giving us 25 degrees, right? So at least there we know. We know that from all this, we know that this missing angle here is 25 degrees. And you can also check it, because 120 plus 25 is 145. 145 plus 35 is 180. Means it's right? Because now that we know all of our angles, now comes the part where we start seeing what angles correspond to what sides. Again, top angle opens up to the bottom side, right? The left angle opens up to the right side, and then the right angle opens up to the left side. Always the opposite. Top goes to the bottom, right goes to the left goes to the right? Always across, always opposite. And then it starts making a lot more sense, right? Because again, we want to go shortest to longest. So think, our shortest angle is 25. The 25 goes to the left, so we know our shortest side is going to be ED. After the 25 comes the 35. We know the 35 goes to the bottom. The bottom is DK. So that's our middle side. And then we know that our biggest angle is 120. 120 goes to the right. This side is EK. So that's our biggest. And it's always that idea. It's that idea of always thinking of an angle being created by an angle creating a side, right? Almost think, the more you open up a door, the more space you have to walk through, right? Because the more you open a door, the wider it becomes. The less you open up a door, the less space you have. Same idea. If you open up a door wide, you have a bigger entrance. If you open up the door a little bit, you have a smaller entrance. It's that same idea, guys. Biggest angles create the biggest sides. Smallest angles create the smallest sides. So this would be our smallest side, ED, because it goes with the 25. Then the middle side would be DK, because it goes with the middle. And then EK would be our longest, because it goes with our biggest side, right? Biggest angle, I'm sorry. And now this is how we actually list the sides from shortest to longest. The opposite idea is true, right? Let's say that they give us now sides and we want to figure out what the shortest and long and biggest. And we want to figure out what's the biggest and smallest angles. It's the same idea, guys. It's actually pretty easier too, just to even write this, right? So let's say that we have, this is here, again, let's make it K, let's make this one S, let's make this one U right there, right? And let's say that this side here is going to end up being 16 inches. Let's make this side 15 inches. And let's make this side 10 inches, right? Now we want to list the angles. We want to list the angles, right? We want to list the angles from smallest to biggest, right? List the angles from smallest to biggest. So before we were listing sides, now we want to list angles, right? So let's look at it, and same idea, right? We know that the 10, it's always the opposite, right? So we know that the U goes to the 10, right? We know that the K goes to the 15, and we know that the S goes to the 16. Because again, the top goes to the bottom, right? The left goes to the right. The right angle goes to the left, right? They always go together. So now if we're looking at the angles from smallest to biggest, let's see, what's our smallest side? Our smallest side is 10. So if our smallest side is 10, that means our smallest angle has to be U. Angle U, right? And it has to be our smallest, because if this is the smallest side, the smallest angle goes with the smallest side, the angle U. After that 10 is the 15. we see that the 15 goes with angle K. So our middle angle is angle K. And then our biggest side is 16. So if our biggest side is 16, the biggest angle is angle S. Again, it becomes easier to write because now you're not even dealing with two variables, you're just dealing with one variable. So the smallest angle is U because it goes with the smallest side. The middle angle is K because it goes with the middle side. And the biggest angle is S because S goes with the biggest side. It's just that idea, guys. And I'll do one more for you to see. But again, drawing those arrows does help a lot, guys. So get comfortable with drawing them. Because once you draw them, most of the thinking is already done for you guys. So let's say again, last one. Say we have that, right? This is gonna end up being 7 centimeters. This is gonna end up being 8 centimeters. This is gonna end up being 11 centimeters. Let's make this one E. Let's make this one J. Let's make this one here M, right? Same thing. We wanna list the angles from smallest to biggest. Smallest to biggest. So if we want to go smallest to biggest for the angles, guys, same thing. Draw your arrows to see what corresponds to what. The top angle goes with the bottom side. The right angle goes to the left side. And the left angle goes to the right side, right? So top to bottom. Right to left, left to right? And now since we want to go from the smallest to the biggest, our smallest side is 7. The 7 goes with the M, so our smallest angle is M. Next, after the 7 comes the 8. The 8 goes with E, so E's our middle angle. And then we see that our biggest side is 11. The 11 goes with angle J. And we're done. Just always that order, guys. And again, once you have those arrows showing you what corresponds to what goes with what, it becomes so much easier, guys. So get in the habit of actually drawing those arrows, okay? And if you need help, let me know. Take care.